I am Natalie, 28 years old, and I spent my entire life seeking validation from a family that never truly saw me. Our annual gathering at the lake house was supposed to be relaxing, but my brother Kyle had other plans. His so-called harmless prank that day left me curled in agony while my family rolled their eyes. They always dismissed my pain as exaggeration, but this time the MRI results would speak louder than their denial ever could. If you have ever been dismissed by your family, please hit like and subscribe. Before I continue my story, let me know in the comments if you have ever had to fight to be believed when you were truly hurting. Growing up in the Henderson household meant understanding your place in the family hierarchy, and mine was firmly at the bottom. My father, Richard, a successful investment banker with a perpetual frown, had always made it clear that disappointment was his primary emotion toward me. My mother, Diane, a real estate agent who valued appearance above all else, was expert at the subtle art of comparing me unfavorably to others. Then there was Kyle, my brother, 3 years older, and the undisputed golden child. Kyle was everything I was not in our parents' eyes. He was a star athlete who brought home trophies and scholarships. His academic achievements, while not spectacular, were deemed acceptable because of his prowess on the football field. Every conversation at family gatherings inevitably turned to Kyle's latest accomplishments. Meanwhile, my artistic abilities and later my career in graphic design were treated as cute hobbies, certainly nothing worth celebrating. Our childhood home in suburban Boston had felt like different worlds under one roof. Kyle's room was adorned with medals, trophies, and sports memorabilia. My parents spared no expense for his equipment, private coaching, and team trips. My room, by contrast, was functional but plain. When I asked for art supplies, I was told we needed to budget carefully despite my father's salary that afforded us a comfortable upper-middle-class lifestyle. The dynamic between Kyle and me was established early. His favorite pastime was what he called pranks, and what I experienced as torment. When I was 7, he tripped me as I walked down our wooden staircase. I tumbled down 8 steps and sprained my wrist. My parents' response: boys will be boys. When I was 10, he locked me in our basement storage closet for 3 hours while my parents were out. I was hysterical by the time they returned, but Kyle laughed it off as just playing around, and somehow I was the one punished for overreacting. Physical pain became something I was expected to endure silently. When Kyle threw a baseball at my back, leaving a bruise the size of my palm, my father told me to toughen up. When he pushed me off my bike as a joke, tearing my knee open on the gravel, my mother was more concerned about the blood staining my new jeans than my injury. The pattern was consistent. Kyle hurt me, I expressed pain, and somehow I was blamed for disrupting family harmony. My attempts to speak up were met with eye rolls and accusations of being dramatic. By my teenage years, I had learned to internalize the pain, both physical and emotional. I began to question my own perceptions. Was I really as oversensitive as they claimed? Was the pain truly as bad as it felt? This self-doubt followed me into adulthood, making me apologize for basic needs and feelings. After college, I moved to Chicago and built a life for myself as a graphic designer. The physical distance provided some healing, and I established boundaries that helped protect my growing sense of self-worth. I limited visits home to major holidays and occasional family events, which made the interactions somewhat more bearable. I found success in my career, creating award-winning campaigns for major clients and eventually landing a senior position at a respected agency. None of this impressed my family, but it gave me the financial independence and confidence to begin standing up for myself in small ways. The Lake Tahoe vacation was a tradition that began 5 years ago when my parents purchased a lakefront property as a summer home. The annual week-long gathering included my parents, Kyle, sometimes his rotating girlfriends, and occasionally extended family members. I always approached these vacations with a mixture of hope and dread. Perhaps this would be the year they would see me as an equal, as someone worthy of respect. Perhaps this would be the year Kyle would behave like an adult instead of the bully he had always been. This particular summer, I almost declined the invitation. A significant project at work provided a convenient excuse, but something pushed me to go. Maybe it was that persistent, childlike hope for family acceptance that never quite dies no matter how many disappointments pile up. So I boarded the plane from Chicago to Reno, rented a car, and made the scenic drive to the lake house anxiety building with each mile. The property itself was stunning. A 3-story cedar cabin with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the crystal blue water of Lake Tahoe. A private dock extended into the lake with a boathouse containing jet skis, kayaks, and other water toys my father collected but rarely used. The surrounding pines provided privacy from neighboring properties, creating the illusion that our family existed in its own little world. Under different circumstances, it would have been paradise. I arrived on Friday afternoon, the last to join the gathering. My mother greeted me with her standard once-over, noting that I looked tired and could use some highlights in my hair. My father barely looked up from his newspaper, offering a distracted hello. Kyle was already on the dock with his latest girlfriend Vanessa, a personal trainer with a seemingly permanent smile, who I would later learn had no idea of the family dynamics she had walked into. The first dinner together followed the usual script. My mother asked surface-level questions about my job but zoned out during my answers. My father dominated the conversation with stories about his golf game and business successes. Kyle interjected with jokes at my expense that were thinly veiled as harmless teasing. I smiled through gritted teeth, reminding myself it was only for a week. I could maintain the peace for 7 days. That night in the guest room assigned to me, I unpacked my suitcase and took a moment to gaze out at the moonlight reflecting off the lake. The scene was so beautiful, so peaceful, it seemed impossible that anything could disturb it. I took deep breaths, practicing the mindfulness techniques my therapist had taught me. I could navigate this visit with grace and self-respect. I could enjoy the natural beauty while maintaining emotional distance from the family dynamics. At least that was the plan. I sent a quick text to my best friend Emma before bed. Just arrived. Everyone is exactly the same. Wish me luck. Her response came immediately. Remember, you are not the problem. Call me if you need a reality check. I fell asleep clutching my phone, grateful for that distant lifeline to sanity. Saturday morning dawned bright and beautiful, the kind of perfect summer day that travel brochures promise but rarely deliver. The lake was calm, reflecting the surrounding mountains like a mirror. Birds called to each other from the tall pines, and the air smelled of fresh water and pine needles. For a brief moment, as I sipped coffee on the deck alone, I felt peaceful. Family breakfast was surprisingly pleasant. My mother had prepared a spread of pancakes, fresh fruit, and crispy bacon. Everyone was still in good spirits, perhaps because the vacation had just begun, and tensions had not yet had time to build. Kyle was still asleep, which certainly contributed to the calm atmosphere. My father even asked about one of my clients, remembering correctly that I had mentioned landing a major sportswear account. It was not exactly warmth, but it was acknowledgement, and I took it gratefully. By mid-morning, I was beginning to think that perhaps this vacation would be different. My mother and I walked along the lake shore, collecting interesting stones and actually having a conversation that did not involve criticism. She seemed interested when I explained my latest design project, and I caught myself feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe at 58, she was finally seeing me as an adult with a valuable life and career. That fragile peace shattered when Kyle emerged for lunch, bleary-eyed and already irritable. He sauntered onto the deck where we were setting up a buffet of sandwiches and salads, Vanessa trailing behind him, looking uncomfortable. It took less than 5 minutes for him to start. "What is with that haircut, Nat? You look like you are trying to be 20 again," he said, loading his plate with food. "You know you are almost 30, right? Maybe time to grow up with your style." I instinctively reached for my recently cut bob, a style my own hairdresser had praised as sophisticated and flattering. My mother glanced at me, and then quickly away, her earlier warmth evaporating. My father chuckled, which emboldened Kyle further. "And those sandals look like something a tourist would wear," he continued, pointing at my perfectly normal leather sandals. "Are you going on a jungle safari later?" Vanessa looked mortified, glancing between Kyle and me with growing discomfort. I could tell she was seeing a side of him she had not encountered before. "I think her sandals are cute," she offered quietly, which earned her a sharp look from Kyle. "You do not have to defend her," he said. "She knows I am just kidding around." "Right, Nat, we have always been like this." I forced a smile and changed the subject, asking about their plans for the afternoon. The conversation shifted, but the damage was done. The familiar knot of tension had returned to my stomach, and my mother's earlier friendliness had been replaced with a cool distance, as though she was preemptively siding with Kyle in a conflict that had barely begun. After lunch, I offered to clean up, hoping for some time alone to regain my composure. My father and Kyle headed to the boathouse to check on the jet skis, while my mother took Vanessa for a tour of the property. As I rinsed dishes and loaded the dishwasher, I gave myself a pep talk. I would not let Kyle ruin this vacation. I would maintain my dignity and distance. I would not engage with his provocations. By mid-afternoon, the temperature had risen to the mid-80s, and the lake beckoned with its cool blue water. I changed into a swimsuit, covered up with a light sundress, and headed down to the dock with a book and towel. My plan was to find a quiet corner to read and perhaps dangle my feet in the water away from family interactions. The dock was a substantial wooden structure that extended about 50 feet into the lake. At the end was a covered sitting area, with comfortable chairs and a small table. To the right, a ladder descended into the water for swimmers. The wood was warm beneath my bare feet as I walked to the farthest point, settling into a chair with my novel. For about 20 minutes, I enjoyed perfect solitude. The gentle lapping of water against the dock pilings created a soothing rhythm. I had just reached a particularly engaging chapter when I heard the unmistakable heavy footsteps of my brother approaching. My body tensed automatically, a conditioned response to his presence. Kyle was not alone. He had brought Vanessa and 2 cousins who had arrived for the day, Jackson and Lily. They were carrying coolers and towels, clearly planning to take over the dock space. I considered leaving immediately but decided that would look like surrender. Instead, I smiled politely and returned to my book, hoping they would respect my space. That hope was quickly dashed when Kyle cannonballed into the water just feet from where I sat, sending a splash over my book and legs. I jerked back, protecting my novel as he surfaced with a grin. "Oh, sorry, did I get you wet?" he asked, not sounding sorry at all. "It is a lake, you know. People tend to swim in it." Jackson laughed, though Lily shot me a sympathetic glance. Vanessa looked uncomfortable again, shifting from foot to foot at the edge of the dock. "I am just reading," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "There is plenty of room for everyone." Kyle pulled himself up the ladder, water streaming from his 6-foot frame. At 31, he still maintained the athletic build of his football days, using it to physically dominate spaces just as he had when we were children. Reading at a lake house, he said loudly to the others. "That is so Natalie. Always the boring one." I felt my cheeks flush, but kept my eyes on my book, though I was no longer registering the words. Kyle began organizing a game with the others. Something involving diving for weighted objects he tossed into the water. With each passing minute, the game moved closer to where I sat, until they were shouting and splashing just feet away. When a dive ring landed in my lap, I knew it was no accident. I handed it back without comment, but Kyle was not satisfied with my non-reaction. "Why do not you join us, Nat?" he called. "Or are you afraid of getting your hair wet, always so concerned about your appearance?" This was rich coming from someone who spent an hour on his hair each morning, but I bit back the retort. "Actually, I think I will head back to the house," I said, gathering my things. "You all enjoy the game." As I stood to leave, Kyle blocked my path, water dripping from his swim trunks onto the dock. Running away again, he asked, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Some things never change, do they?" I tried to step around him, but he shifted slightly, maintaining the blockade while appearing casual to the others. "Move, Kyle," I said quietly. "Ask nicely," he taunted, a familiar refrain from childhood when he would hold toys or food out of my reach. The others were watching now, the game forgotten. I felt the weight of their eyes, the silent judgment and confusion. I was immediately transported back to being 8 years old, humiliated and powerless. "Please move," I finally said, hating the tremor in my voice. Kyle stepped aside with an exaggerated bow. "Your Majesty," he said. always so sensitive. I walked past him with as much dignity as I could muster, feeling his eyes boring into my back. I had nearly reached the shore end of the dock when his voice rang out again. "Hey Nat, you forgot something." I turned automatically, and that was my mistake. Kyle was grinning, holding up my sunglasses, which had fallen from my beach bag. As I paused, he tossed them toward me deliberately high and wide, so that I had to lunge to catch them. The momentum carried me sideways, and for a moment, I thought I would fall into the water. I regained my balance and shot him a look of pure frustration. "Grow up, Kyle," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. His expression darkened. He never did like being challenged, especially publicly. I should have recognized the danger in his eyes, the same look he got before some of his worst childhood stunts. Instead, I turned and continued walking, thinking the confrontation was over. I did not hear him follow me. The dock creaked under our combined weight, but I assumed it was just the normal settling of wood in the heat. I was 3 steps from the shore when I felt his presence directly behind me, too close, his breath on my neck. "You know what your problem is, Nat," he said, his voice deceptively light. "You have always thought you were better than everyone else." And then he shoved me. The push came from behind with enough force to send me flying forward. Time seemed to slow as I lost my footing, arms windmilling uselessly as I tried to regain balance. Instead of landing on the soft sand of the shoreline, my trajectory took me sideways. My right hip and shoulder slammed against the concrete foundation that anchored the dock to the shore, a raised edge I had stepped over countless times without thought. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. A sickening crack resonated through my body as pain exploded across my right side. My head snapped back and connected with the hard edge, sending stars across my vision. I crumpled, sliding down to where the water met the shore, half submerged and completely stunned. For several seconds, I could not breathe. My lungs refused to expand, paralyzed by pain and shock. When air finally rushed back in, it brought with it a wave of nausea so intense I nearly vomited. The world spun violently around me as I tried to orient myself. Hot pain radiated from my lower back, spreading tendrils of agony down my legs and up my spine. My head throbbed with each heartbeat, and something warm trickled down my temple. Distantly, I heard laughter turn to concerned voices, then to shouts. Vanessa screaming. Lily calling my name. The splash of footsteps in shallow water. But most clearly, I heard Kyle saying, "It was just a joke. I barely touched her." I tried to sit up, but my body refused to cooperate. The pain intensified with every slight movement. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision as I struggled to remain conscious. Someone, I think it was Lily, cradled my head and told me not to move. The commotion brought my parents running from the house. My father, still holding a beer from his afternoon relaxation, assessed the scene with obvious annoyance rather than concern. "What is going on here?" he demanded, looking at the gathering crowd rather than at me, his injured daughter. Kyle immediately launched into his defense. "We were just messing around and she tripped. You know how clumsy she is." My mother knelt beside me, but her face showed more embarrassment than worry. "Natalie," she hissed, "what happened?" I tried to form words through the pain. Kyle pushed me. I managed to gasp. I hit the concrete. My back and head. She looked at Kyle, who was already shaking his head. "I was just kidding around," he insisted. "She is fine. She just fell weird." My father stepped closer, finally looking at me, curled in pain at the edge of the water. His expression hardened. "Walk it off." "You are fine," he growled, the same words he had used throughout my childhood for everything from skinned knees to sprained ankles. "She does this for sympathy," Kyle added, addressing Vanessa and our cousins as if sharing an insider secret about me. "Always has." The betrayal cut almost as deep as the physical pain. I had spent a lifetime being disbelieved by the people who should have protected me, but somehow it still had the power to shock. My mother stood up, brushing sand from her linen pants. "She will do anything to ruin a peaceful weekend," she said with a sigh. Natalie, when you are done with this display, we will be having dinner in an hour. Tears sprang to my eyes from pain or humiliation or both. Please, I need help, I whispered. Something is really wrong. Jackson and Lily exchanged uncomfortable glances. Vanessa looked horrified. Kyle stared at the ground, jaw clenched. No one moved to help me. Finally, Lily broke ranks. I will help her to her room, she offered, gesturing for Jackson to assist. My cousins carefully helped me to my feet, supporting my weight as pain shot through my back. Each step was agony, and by the time we reached the house, I was sweating and dizzy. They helped me to my bed, where Lily quietly asked if I wanted her to call a doctor. I declined, conditioned by years of being told I was overreacting. She left a glass of water and some over-the-counter pain relievers on the nightstand, promising to check on me later. Alone in my room, I curled into a fetal position, the only posture that somewhat alleviated the crushing pain in my back. I reached for my phone to text Emma, but found my vision too blurry to focus on the screen. The dizziness was getting worse, not better. I swallowed the pain pills dry, praying they would make even a small difference. From downstairs, I could hear life continuing as if nothing had happened. The clink of dishes as dinner was prepared. Laughter from the deck. Music from the expensive sound system. I was an afterthought, a minor inconvenience in their perfect family vacation. I drifted in and out of consciousness as afternoon turned to evening. At some point, I heard a soft knock at my door, followed by Vanessa's timid voice asking if I needed anything. I could not summon the energy to respond. Later, I vaguely registered Lily checking on me, her concerned face swimming in and out of focus. I tried to tell her that something was seriously wrong, but I could not form coherent sentences. Through the thin walls, I overheard snippets of dinner conversation. My father's voice. She has always been the dramatic one. My mother's response. I do not know where we went wrong with her. Kyle, defensive tone. It was nothing, I swear. Anyone else would have laughed it off. Night fell and the house eventually quieted. I lay awake, unable to find any position that did not cause excruciating pain. The headache had intensified to a relentless pounding. More alarming, I noticed I could not feel my toes properly. When I tried to wiggle them, the response was delayed and weak. Fear began to overtake pain as I realized something was seriously, dangerously wrong. I needed help, but years of conditioning made me hesitate to disturb my family again. They would only accuse me of seeking attention, of ruining their vacation with my problems. So I suffered through the night alone, watching the digital clock on the nightstand mark each excruciating hour until dawn finally broke. By morning, the pain had evolved into something even more terrifying. My right leg was completely numb, while my left buzzed with pins and needles. The headache had localized to the back of my head, a spot that felt hot and swollen to the touch. When I tried to sit up, the room spun so violently. I immediately collapsed back onto the pillow. I heard the house coming to life around me. Footsteps in the hallway. Water running in nearby bathrooms. Voices calling good morning to each other. No one checked on me until my mother briefly opened my door around 9 o'clock. We are all going hiking, she announced, not bothering to enter the room. Will you be joining us, or are you still not feeling well? The casual dismissal of my condition nearly broke me. Mom, I think I need a doctor, I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. Something is really wrong. I cannot feel my legs properly. She sighed dramatically. Natalie, do not you think you are taking this too far? It was just a little fall. You are ruining everyone's time with this behavior. I am not making this up. I insisted, hearing the slur in my words but unable to correct it. Please, Mom. I need help. Your father says you are fine, she replied firmly. You will feel better if you get up and move around. Stop wallowing. With that, she closed the door, leaving me alone with my escalating terror. I tried again to reach for my phone, but my arm felt leaden and uncooperative. The room was spinning faster now, and black edges were creeping into my vision. This was beyond pain, beyond anything I had experienced before. This was my body shutting down. The morning hours passed in a blur of pain and increasing neurological symptoms. I drifted in and out of consciousness, each time waking to find my condition worse than before. The numbness had spread upward from my legs to my hips. The headache pulsed with each heartbeat. Most frightening of all, my thoughts were becoming disorganized and slow, as if my brain was wading through molasses. Around 11 o'clock, my father appeared in my doorway, clearly irritated that I had not joined the family activities. "Everyone is having a great time except you," he stated flatly. "Your brother feels terrible that you are using a little horsing around to create all this drama." I tried to explain that I physically could not get out of bed, that something was seriously wrong, but the words came out jumbled and slurred. This only seemed to reinforce his belief that I was being theatrical. "You are ruining everyone's time," he said, crossing his arms. "Your mother is upset, Kyle is walking on eggshells, and our guests are uncomfortable. Is that what you wanted?" The injustice of his accusation pierced through the fog in my brain. I had not asked to be injured. I had not asked to be disbelieved and abandoned when I needed help, but arguing was beyond my capabilities at this point. I could only shake my head weakly, which sent fresh waves of pain and dizziness crashing over me. "Dad, please," I managed to whisper. "Hospital." His expression hardened. "Stop this nonsense and pull yourself together," he ordered, before turning and leaving, shutting the door firmly behind him. Alone again, panic set in. I knew with absolute certainty that something was catastrophically wrong. The symptoms I was experiencing went far beyond a simple fall or minor injury. With tremendous effort, I managed to roll toward the nightstand where my phone lay charging. My fingers felt thick and unresponsive, as I fumbled with the device, dropping it twice before managing to hold it in front of my face. The screen swam before my eyes, making it nearly impossible to focus. I somehow navigated to my recent calls and pressed Emma's name, praying she would answer. Each ring seemed to take an eternity. When her voice finally came through, cheerful and clear, I almost wept with relief. "Hey, stranger, how is the family vacation from hell going?" she greeted me. I tried to respond, but could only produce a garbled sound. "Emma," I slurred the simple word, requiring immense concentration. Her tone changed instantly. "Natalie, what is wrong? You sound strange." I forced each word out individually, fighting against my uncooperative mouth. "Hurt." Kyle pushed. "Hit head. Back. Cannot feel legs. No one believes." Emma's voice sharpened with alarm. "Natalie, you need an ambulance right now." "Those are serious symptoms. Are your parents there?" "Will not help," I managed. "Think I am lying." I could hear Emma moving on the other end of the line, keys jingling, doors closing. "I am calling emergency services right now," she said firmly. "Stay on the line with me." Through a haze, I heard her make another call, clearly explaining the situation and giving the address of the lake house, which she knew from previous conversations. Her voice was authoritative and clear-cutting through any questions with precise information. "They are on their way," she told me after completing the call. "About 15 minutes out. I need you to stay awake and on the phone with me." "Okay. Keep talking if you can." I tried to respond but found darkness encroaching further on my vision. The phone felt impossibly heavy in my hand. Emma's voice seemed to come from very far away, calling my name with increasing urgency. I wanted to answer her, to thank her for being the one person who believed me, but I could not form the words. The next thing I remember is commotion. My bedroom door flying open. Unfamiliar voices, professional and urgent. Hands touching me. Checking vitals, shining lights in my eyes. Words like unresponsive, dilated pupils, and spinal trauma floated above me. A cervical collar was placed around my neck, and I was carefully transferred to a backboard. As the paramedics worked, I caught glimpses of my family gathered in the doorway. My mother, pale face, hand covering her mouth. My father's stunned expression, all his certainty evaporated in the face of emergency medical personnel. Kyle hanging back, looking both afraid and defensive. Their shock might have been satisfying under different circumstances, but I was too far gone to care. The female paramedic was asking rapid-fire questions that my parents struggled to answer. When did this happen yesterday afternoon? What exactly occurred? She fell against the concrete edge of the dock. Has she been conscious? Yes, she was talking earlier. Did she complain of specific symptoms? Just said she was in pain. Did anyone monitor her through the night? Well, no, but... As they prepared to move me, the paramedic checked my pupils again and must not have liked what she saw. We need to move now, she told her partner. Possible TBI with increasing ICP. Notify the hospital we will need immediate imaging. Even in my deteriorating state, I registered my mother's voice suddenly small and uncertain. Is she going to be all right? The paramedic was direct. She has symptoms of a serious traumatic brain injury and possible spinal trauma. She should have been brought in immediately after the accident. Every minute counts with these injuries. I felt myself being lifted, the movement sending fresh agony through my body despite their careful handling. As they carried me through the house, my family followed their protests and explanations sounding hollow and desperate. We thought she was just being dramatic, my father was saying. She has always been sensitive. The male paramedic response was professional but cold. Sir, these are objective neurological symptoms. There is nothing dramatic about them. They loaded me into the ambulance equipment, beeping and voices urgent around me. Just before the doors closed, I heard Kyle's voice, defensive and frightened. It was just a joke. I did not mean to hurt her. The female paramedic, now establishing an IV in my arm, looked up sharply. This was no accident. Someone pushed her. There was a moment of stunned silence before my mother spoke. It was just siblings playing around. An accident. The paramedic returned her attention to me, but not before saying crisply, "You better call a lawyer. This is now a potential assault case with serious bodily injury." The ambulance doors closed on my family's shocked faces. As we began to move, sirens wailing, I felt myself slipping deeper into unconsciousness. The last thing I remember is the paramedic calling my name repeatedly, her voice growing more distant with each repetition, and then nothing but darkness. I woke to the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment and the antiseptic smell of hospital. Opening my eyes required tremendous effort, as if my eyelids were weighted. When I finally managed it, harsh fluorescent light sent daggers of pain through my skull, forcing me to close them again immediately. Disorientation clouded my thoughts. Where was I? What had happened? My body felt disconnected, present, but not quite under my control. Something was in my throat, uncomfortable and foreign. Tubes and wires seemed to be attached to me from multiple points. Panic began to rise until a calm voice broke through the confusion. "Natalie, can you hear me? I am Dr. Patel. You are in the hospital. You are safe. Try not to fight the breathing tube. It is helping you right now." I forced my eyes open again, more carefully this time. A woman in a white coat stood beside my bed, her expression both kind and serious. When she saw my eyes focus on her, she smiled slightly. "Good, you are coming back to us. I am going to ask the nurse to get the respiratory therapist so we can evaluate removing that breathing tube. Just try to stay calm for a few more minutes." True to her word, within what seemed like moments more medical personnel entered the room. The process of removing the breathing tube was unpleasant but quick. A nurse offered me ice chips afterward to soothe my raw throat. Each tiny movement sent waves of pain radiating from my back, but my mind was clearing slowly, memories returning in disjointed fragments. The lake house. Kyle pushing me. Hitting my head. The paramedics. And then nothing. When the room had quieted again with just Dr. Patel and a nurse remaining, the doctor pulled up a chair beside my bed. "Natalie, you have been unconscious for nearly 36 hours, she explained gently. "You were brought in with a traumatic brain injury and spinal trauma. We had to perform emergency surgery to relieve pressure on your brain from intracranial bleeding. You also have a fracture in your thoracic spine at T11 and T12. I tried to process this information through the fog of pain medication and residual confusion. Surgery, spinal fracture. The severity was difficult to comprehend. My legs, I whispered, my voice barely audible and rough from the tube. Dr. Patel's expression remained carefully neutral. There is significant swelling around your spinal cord. This is causing the numbness and weakness in your lower extremities. Until the swelling decreases, we will not know the full extent of the neurological impact. But you should know that you arrived just in time. If treatment had been delayed much longer, the damage could have been permanent or even fatal. The weight of how close I had come to dying settled over me. A tear slipped down my cheek, followed by another. The nurse quietly handed me a tissue. As Dr. Patel continued explaining my condition and treatment plan, she mentioned something that caught my attention through the haze of medical terminology. The MRI also showed evidence of several previously healed fractures, she said, her tone shifting slightly. Particularly in your ribs and left wrist. These appear to be from different incidents over a period of years. I froze, tissue clutched in my hand. Those were from Kyle's previous jokes. The time he pushed me down the stairs when I was 7. The baseball he threw directly at my ribs when I was 12. Incidents my parents had dismissed, injuries I had been told to walk off. Dr. Patel watched my reaction carefully. Natalie, the pattern of injuries we are seeing is concerning, she said gently. Both the current trauma and the historical evidence. The hospital social worker would like to speak with you when you feel up to it. I nodded slightly, the movement sending fresh pain through my skull. Before we could continue, a commotion in the hallway interrupted us. Loud, insistent voices demanded information about my condition. My family had arrived. Dr. Patel stood. I will speak with them, she said. Would you like them to come in, or do you need more time? The thought of facing them sent a spike of anxiety through me, but I knew this confrontation was inevitable. Just not all at once, I whispered. 1 or 2 at a time. She nodded understanding and left the room. Through the partially open door, I could hear her explaining visiting restrictions due to my condition. Then my parents' voices demanding and entitled as always. I closed my eyes, gathering what little strength I had. My mother entered first, my father close behind her. They stopped several feet from the bed, as if unsure how to approach this new broken version of their daughter. My mother looked like she had aged years in 2 days, her normally perfect appearance disheveled. My father seemed smaller somehow, his confident posture replaced with an uncertain slump. Oh, Natalie, my mother breathed, her eyes taking in the bandages, the monitors, the IV lines. We had no idea. The simplicity of that statement encapsulated our entire relationship. They had never seen me, never believed me, never taken my pain seriously. And now they stood before irrefutable medical evidence that could not be dismissed as dramatic or attention-seeking. My father cleared his throat. The doctors say you had bleeding in your brain, he said, as if confirming information he still could not quite believe. And your back is broken. Fractured, I corrected my voice, still barely above a whisper. 2 vertebrae. An uncomfortable silence fell. What could they possibly say now? That I should walk it off. That I was ruining their vacation. The absurdity of their previous dismissals hung in the air between us. The silence was broken by a nurse entering to check my vitals. As she worked efficiently around me, updating charts and adjusting equipment, my parents shifted awkwardly. When she left, my mother stepped closer to the bed. We did not know, she repeated, as if this absolved them. How could we have known it was this serious? I tried to laugh, but it came out as a pained cough. I told you, I managed. I begged for help. My father's face flushed. You have always been sensitive about these things, he said defensively. How were we supposed to know? This time was different. Before I could respond, the door opened again, and Kyle stood there looking uncharacteristically small. His usual confident swagger was gone, replaced by hesitant, almost timid body language. When he saw me surrounded by medical equipment, his face drained of color. "Jesus, Nat," he whispered. "I did not mean to, it was just supposed to be a joke." His words ignited something in me, a lifetime of suppressed anger breaking through the fog of medication and pain. "A joke," I repeated, my voice stronger, now fueled by rage. "Was it a joke when you pushed me down the stairs when I was 7? Was it a joke when you threw that baseball at my ribs so hard it fractured them? Was it a joke every time you hurt me and they told me to stop being dramatic?" Kyle stepped back as if physically struck. The color that had drained from his face returned in a rush of red. "I did not push you that hard," he insisted, the familiar defensiveness creeping back into his tone. "You must have lost your balance or something." At that moment, Dr. Patel returned with another woman in professional attire who introduced herself as Sandra Torres, the hospital social worker. Dr. Patel took in the tension in the room with a practiced eye. "I need to discuss Natalie MRI results with all of you," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "The images show not only her current injuries, but also a pattern of previous trauma that raises serious concerns." She pulled up images on a tablet and began pointing out the current fractures in my spine, the area where bleeding had occurred in my brain. Then she switched to different views, highlighting old injuries, healed fractures in 3 ribs, evidence of an old greenstick fracture in my left wrist, signs of previous trauma to my right shoulder. "These injuries," she explained, "are consistent with a pattern of physical trauma over many years. They tell a concerning story of repeated injuries." My mother gasped softly. Kyle shook his head in denial. My father's face had gone completely blank, a sign I recognized from childhood as extreme stress. Dr. Torres stepped forward. "In cases like this, we are required to document and report patterns that suggest potential abuse," she explained calmly. "I would like to ask you some questions about how these injuries occurred." "What exactly are you implying?" my father demanded, finding his voice at last. Dr. Torres met his gaze steadily. "Sir, I am not implying anything. I am stating that your daughter has physical evidence of multiple traumatic injuries over many years, culminating in life-threatening trauma that was left untreated for nearly 24 hours. We have a legal and ethical obligation to understand how this happened." My mother suddenly turned to Kyle, her expression shifting from shock to something else entirely. She did not look at me or the doctors when she spoke, her words directed solely at my brother. "You better call a lawyer," she said, her voice barely audible. The room fell silent. In that moment, something broke permanently between us. Not just my spine or the blood vessels in my brain, but the pretense that we had ever been a normal, loving family. My mother was not concerned about justice for me or horrified by the years of abuse revealed by the MRI. Her first instinct was to protect Kyle, to circle the wagons against outside scrutiny. Dr. Patel suggested my parents and Kyle speak with Dr. Torres in another room. As they filed out, each avoiding my eyes, I felt a strange sense of validation wash over me. The MRI had revealed more than just my current injuries. It had exposed the truth I had been trying to tell for 28 years. Left alone, I closed my eyes against fresh tears. The pain was excruciating, but for the first time I was being believed. The evidence was literally written in my bones, irrefutable proof that I had not been making it up, had not been too sensitive, had not been seeking attention. I had been a victim, and now everyone knew it. A soft knock at the door roused me. Emma stood there, her face drawn with worry, a small overnight bag in her hand. She had flown in from Chicago the moment she heard I was hospitalized. "Oh, Nat," she whispered, coming to my bedside and carefully taking my hand. "I am so sorry this happened to you." In that moment, the contrast between her genuine concern and my family calculated reactions could not have been more stark. Emma had believed me instantly over the phone. She had taken action when my own family had abandoned me. She had probably saved my life. "You were right all along," I told her, squeezing her hand weakly. "They were never going to see me." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "But now everyone else will," she promised. "And I am not going anywhere." As exhaustion pulled me back towards sleep, one thought remained clear. The MRI had revealed the truth not just about my injuries, but about my entire life. And somehow, through the pain and betrayal, I felt the first fragile threads of liberation beginning to form. The days following my diagnosis blurred together in a haze of pain medication, medical procedures, and rotating hospital staff. My condition stabilized enough for me to be moved from intensive care to a regular neurological floor, though the road to recovery stretched endlessly before me. The fractures in my spine would require months of healing, followed by intensive physical therapy to regain strength and mobility. The traumatic brain injury, while no longer immediately life-threatening, left me with headaches, memory issues, and occasional difficulty finding words. Through it all, Emma remained a constant presence, advocating for me when I was too weak to speak for myself, asking the questions I forgot to ask, and providing the emotional support my family had never given me. She took a leave of absence from her job in Chicago to stay in a hotel near the hospital, refusing to leave until she was certain I was out of danger. My family, by contrast, entered a strange orbit around me, appearing for brief, uncomfortable visits before disappearing again. My parents had engaged an expensive attorney who advised them to limit what they said about the incident. My mother brought flowers and fashion magazines but avoided any substantive conversation. My father spoke mainly to the doctors, focusing on treatment plans and prognosis rather than addressing what had happened. Kyle stopped coming altogether after the third day, sending generic get-well cards through my mother instead. The legal consequences began unfolding almost immediately. Detective Sarah Wilkins from the local police department interviewed me in my hospital room, recording my statement about the incident with professional detachment. She explained that given the severity of my injuries and the circumstances surrounding them, they were investigating the case as potential felony assault. "Can family members be charged with assault?" I asked her, still struggling to conceptualize my brother as a criminal, despite everything. "Absolutely," she confirmed. "Family relationship does not exempt someone from responsibility for causing serious bodily harm, especially with injuries as severe as yours." Later that week, I learned that Kyle had been formally charged with assault causing serious bodily injury. My parents had posted his bail, hired him a separate attorney, and were apparently mounting an aggressive defense centered around the incident being a harmless prank gone wrong. This information came not from my family but from Dr. Torres, who had become an unexpected ally in navigating both my medical care and the legal aftermath. She visited regularly to check on my emotional well-being and to connect me with resources for survivors of family violence. Victims of long-term family abuse often struggle with accepting that what happened to them was actually abuse, she explained during one of our sessions. There is a process of recognition and grief that can be very challenging. "I am not sure I qualify as abused," I argued weakly. "It was just my brother being a jerk and my parents not believing me." Dr. Torres regarded me thoughtfully. "Natalie, if a stranger had pushed you and caused these injuries, would you hesitate to call it assault? If parents ignored their child's internal bleeding and fractured spine for 24 hours despite pleas for help, would you question whether that was neglect?" Put that way, it was harder to minimize what had happened. Still, years of conditioning made it difficult to apply those labels to my own experience. My family had always operated on the premise that everything was normal, that I was the problem. Dismantling that narrative was proving to be as painful as my physical injuries. 2 weeks into my hospital stay, my parents requested a family meeting with me. Dr. Torres offered to be present as a neutral third party, which I gratefully accepted. We gathered in a small conference room, me in a wheelchair that I was still learning to navigate, my parents stiffly formal in chairs across the table. My mother spoke first, her words clearly rehearsed. "Natalie, we want you to know that we love you very much and never meant for any of this to happen. We hope you can find it in your heart to forgive the family and help us move past this unfortunate incident." The clinical detachment of her phrasing struck me. The family. This unfortunate incident. No acknowledgement of Kyle's actions or their neglect. No real accountability. "What exactly are you asking me to forgive?" I questioned, finding strength in Dr. Torres' calm presence beside me. My father shifted uncomfortably. "We know you are upset, and you have every right to be. But pressing charges against your brother will tear this family apart. He is looking at serious jail time if this goes forward. So I was being asked to protect Kyle? Again. To put his well-being above mine. Again. Did you know? I said, slowly measuring each word, that the doctors told me if Emma had not called that ambulance, I would likely have died or been permanently paralyzed within hours. My parents exchanged glances. We did not realize how serious it was. My mother repeated the familiar refrain. No, I corrected. You chose not to believe me. There is a difference. My father leaned forward, his business negotiation face taking over. Natalie, we are prepared to cover all your medical expenses. Whatever rehabilitation you need, the best facilities, everything. All we ask is that you tell the prosecutor it was an accident, that you do not want to press charges against your brother. The transactional nature of the offer crystallized everything wrong with our relationship. They were not here because they cared about my pain or recognized the harm done. They were here to protect Kyle and the family image, offering money in exchange for my silence. For the first time in my life, I found myself completely unmoved by their disapproval or manipulation. Perhaps it was the brush with death, or the validation from medical professionals, or simply the cumulative weight of 28 years of gaslighting finally becoming too heavy to bear. Whatever the cause, I felt a strange new power in my broken body. I cannot do that, I said, my voice steady, despite the emotion welling in my throat. I will not lie about what happened. Kyle pushed me deliberately, as he has done countless times throughout my life. The only difference this time is that I nearly died from it, and there are medical records to prove it. My father's face darkened with familiar anger. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us. By trying to send your brother to prison. I met his gaze without flinching. What have you done for me exactly? Ignored my pain. Dismissed my concerns. Taught me that my experiences do not matter. Made me question my own reality. Those are not things I feel particularly grateful for. My mother began to cry, the tears I had seen so often when confronted with her own behavior. The tears that had always made me back down, apologize, accept blame that was not mine to carry. This time I watched her with detached curiosity, recognizing the manipulation tactic for what it was. I do not want Kyle to go to prison, I clarified. I just want the truth acknowledged. I want accountability. I want to stop pretending that systematically hurting someone and calling it a joke is normal or acceptable. Dr. Torres nodded almost imperceptibly beside me, a small gesture of support that gave me courage to continue. I will tell the prosecutor exactly what happened, I said firmly. That Kyle deliberately pushed me, as he has done many times before. That I asked for medical help repeatedly and was denied it. What happens after that is up to the legal system, not me. My father stood abruptly. You will regret this, Natalie. When the media gets hold of it, when our family name is dragged through the mud, when Kyle's life is ruined, you will regret choosing strangers over your own blood. I looked up at him, this man who had loomed so large in my childhood fears, and felt nothing but pity. You had so many chances to choose me, to protect me, to believe me, I said quietly. You made your choice long before we ended up here. They left without further discussion, my mother tearful, my father rigid with anger. Dr. Torres stayed behind, allowing me a moment to process what had just happened. That was incredibly brave, she said finally. Setting boundaries with family is one of the hardest things we ever do. I did not feel brave. I felt exhausted and sad and somehow relieved all at once. For the first time, I had spoken my truth without apologizing for it, without minimizing it to make others comfortable. The cost would be high, but the alternative, continuing to accept the unacceptable, would cost even more. Over the following weeks, my parents made several more attempts at persuasion, each time with new tactics. They sent relatives to plead their case. They had their attorney suggest that a settlement would be more beneficial to me than a protracted legal battle. They even tried to engage Emma, hoping she would influence me to drop the charges. None of it worked. With each attempt, my resolve strengthened. The prosecutor's office moved forward with the case, bolstered by the medical evidence and witness statements from Vanessa and my cousins who had seen the incident. 3 months after the fall, still in outpatient physical therapy and learning to navigate life with ongoing neurological symptoms, I received an unexpected visitor. Kyle had come alone without our parents' knowledge, requesting to speak with me privately. Against Emma's better judgment, I agreed to meet him in a public cafe near my new apartment, one with ramp access for my wheelchair. He looked terrible, weight lost from his athletic frame, dark circles under his eyes. He sat across from me, fidgeting with a paper napkin, unable to hold my gaze for more than a few seconds at a time. "I did not come to ask you to drop the charges," he began, surprising me. "I came to tell you that I am pleading guilty. No trial." I waited, unsure where this was going. He took a deep breath before continuing. "I did it," he admitted, staring at the shredded napkin in his hands. "Not just at the lake. All of it. I hurt you on purpose over and over because I could. Because it made me feel powerful when they always took my side. Because they let me." The admission, so simple and yet so profound, left me momentarily speechless. After decades of denial of it was just a joke of you are too sensitive, hearing the plain truth was almost shocking. "Why are you telling me this now?" I finally asked. He looked up, meeting my eyes properly for the first time. "Because I have to live with what I did to you. And because you deserve to hear someone in this family say it, I was wrong. It was not a joke. It was abuse." The word hung between us, the one I had been so reluctant to apply to my own experience, now spoken aloud by the person who had inflicted it. Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness, but from the profound relief of validation. Kyle went on to explain that he had been attending mandatory therapy as part of his pre-sentencing requirements. For the first time, he was being forced to examine his behavior and its impacts to confront the person he had become. "I am not asking for forgiveness," he clarified. "I just wanted you to know that at least one person in this family is finally telling the truth." I nodded, unable to find words adequate to the moment. We did not embrace when he left. There was too much broken between us for that kind of reconciliation, if such a thing were ever possible. But as I watched him walk away, I felt a knot loosen somewhere deep inside me, a burden shifting, if not entirely lifted. 2 weeks later, Kyle was sentenced to 18 months in a minimum security facility, with an additional 3 years of probation and mandatory completion of an anger management program. My parents did not speak to me after the sentencing. The family had fractured along lines that had always existed beneath the surface, revealed by trauma like fault lines in an earthquake. I grieved the family I had always wanted but never had. Yet in that grief, I found a strange kind of freedom. The truth, however, painful, had finally been spoken aloud. The reality I had questioned for so long was validated by medical records, legal proceedings, and eventually by Kyle's own admission. I was not crazy. I was not too sensitive. I had been hurt repeatedly and deliberately by the people who should have protected me. As winter turned to spring, I focused on rebuilding both physically and emotionally. Each day brought small victories, progress measured in steps taken without assistance, in memories that stayed clear, in boundaries maintained. I was learning to trust my perceptions again, to believe my own experience without needing external validation. It was slow, painful work, but for the first time I was doing it on my terms, without the distorting lens of family gaslighting clouding my vision. 1 year after the fall that nearly claimed my life, I stood at the edge of a different lake, watching sunlight dance across the water. My balance was still not perfect, and I used a cane for longer walks, but I was standing something the initial prognosis had questioned might ever be possible again. The physical recovery had been grueling. 3 surgeries to stabilize my spine. 6 months of physical therapy 3 times a week. Learning to reconnect with a body that felt betrayed and foreign. Occupational therapy to adapt to the lingering effects of the traumatic brain injury, finding new ways to manage the memory lapses and occasional word-finding difficulties that persisted. Pain management for the chronic discomfort that would likely always be part of my life now. Yet the physical challenges formidable, as they were proved easier to overcome than the emotional ones. Healing my body required following medical advice, pushing through pain, and trusting the process. Healing my heart and mind meant confronting a lifetime of gaslighting and manipulation of questioning my own reality to maintain family peace. Dr. Harris, my trauma therapist, had become an essential guide on this journey. In our twice-weekly sessions, we unpacked not just the traumatic incident at the lake, but the years of systematic emotional abuse that had preceded it. When someone tells you repeatedly that your pain is not real, that your perceptions are wrong, that your feelings are invalid, you begin to distrust yourself. She explained during one particularly difficult session. Rebuilding that self-trust is the foundation of healing from gaslighting. The work was painful but transformative. I learned to recognize the familiar patterns of self-doubt and question them. I began to trust my emotional responses, rather than dismissing them as dramatic or oversensitive. I started keeping a journal documenting my experiences as they happened, a concrete record that could not be rewritten by someone else's narrative. My new apartment became a sanctuary, a space entirely my own, decorated with artwork that spoke to me and arranged to accommodate my physical needs. The accessibility features, once a stark reminder of my injuries, gradually became simply part of my home, practical aspects of a space designed for my comfort and independence. My career took an unexpected turn during my recovery. Unable to return to the demanding pace of agency work immediately, I began freelancing from home, taking on select projects that interested me. To my surprise, this selective approach attracted clients who valued quality and creativity over volume and speed. 6 months in, I had built a thriving independent business with a waiting list of clients working fewer hours but earning more than I had at the agency. Most importantly, I had built a chosen family around me. Emma, whose call had saved my life, remained my closest friend, her unwavering support a cornerstone of my recovery. New friends entered my life through support groups and shared interests, people who knew my story and respected my boundaries. Colleagues became confidants. Neighbors became friends. And slowly, a network of genuine connection replaced the toxic bonds I had broken. My parents made one final attempt at reconciliation 4 months after Kyle began serving his sentence. They arrived unannounced at my apartment bearing gifts and platitudes about families sticking together. When I asked if they acknowledged their role in enabling decades of abuse, they deflected, focusing instead on how difficult the situation had been for them. I established clear boundaries. I would consider rebuilding a relationship only if they were willing to attend family therapy, acknowledge the harm done, and commit to change. They declined, unwilling to examine their own behavior too closely, preferring the comfort of denial to the pain of accountability. It was the last time we spoke directly. I heard updates occasionally through extended family members who had chosen to maintain connections with both sides. My mother had joined a country club and buried herself in social obligations. My father had thrown himself into work. They told everyone that their daughter had turned against the family because of a misunderstanding, a narrative that preserved their image while erasing the reality of what had happened. Kyle surprisingly took a different path. From prison, he wrote me letters. I did not read them at first, not ready to revisit the trauma. When I finally did months later, I found not excuses or pleas for forgiveness, but accounts of his therapy process, realizations about our family dynamics, and acceptance of responsibility for his actions. I did not respond immediately, unsure if engaging would help or hinder my healing, but I kept the letters evidence of a truth finally acknowledged. On the anniversary of the fall, I took myself to a local lake, different from the one where I had nearly died, but similar enough to face the memories head-on. As I stood watching the water, I reflected on how much had changed in a year. The physical pain remained a daily reminder of what had happened, but the emotional clarity I had gained was worth every painful step of recovery. I had learned that pain could be a messenger, highlighting what needed attention and care rather than denial. I had discovered that believing yourself even when no one else does is an act of profound courage. I had found that family can be chosen built on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation and denial. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my voice, my truth, and my power to define my own reality. No one would ever again convince me to doubt my own experience or minimize my own pain. No relationship was worth the price of my self-trust and dignity. As I turned to leave the lake, leaning slightly on my cane, I noticed a woman watching me with concern. "Do you need help?" she asked, gesturing to the uneven path ahead. A year ago, I would have denied needing assistance, afraid of appearing weak or burdensome. Today, I smiled and said, "Yes, actually. This part is a bit tricky with the cane. Thank you for asking." She walked beside me to more stable ground, making casual conversation about the beautiful day. When we reached the parking area, she wished me well and continued on her way, a brief, kind interaction between strangers. It struck me then how simple it could be. Seeing someone potential need, offering help without judgment, accepting help without shame. The basic human kindness my family had never managed to extend to me, offered freely by a stranger. Back home, I opened my laptop and began writing my story. Not for my family, who might never truly hear it. Not even primarily for other survivors, though I hoped it might help them. I wrote it for myself to cement the truth I now held firm: I deserved better. We all do. Today, I continue to build a life defined by truth, rather than denial, by boundaries, rather than obligation, by genuine connection, rather than toxic loyalty. The journey is ongoing, with steps forward and occasional slides back, but the direction remains clear. Forward toward healing, forward toward truth, forward toward a life where pain is acknowledged, needs are valid, and reality is not up for negotiation. If my story resonates with you, please know you are not alone. Trust your own experience even when others deny it. Your pain is real. Your perceptions matter. Your truth deserves to be spoken. Have you ever had to stand firm in your truth when others tried to rewrite it? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story helped you feel less alone, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and I wish you strength and validation on yours.